servicing 300 or 400 comic shops as a wholesaler directly, and then many more than that indirectly. We thought we could publish comics. Never having published before, we didn't know what we were doing.
We were very good at not knowing what we were doing. We were professionals.
But it didn't intimidate us. We thought, what's the worst that can happen? We could fail. So by our good fortune, having dealt at conventions and various other avenues, we knew a lot of artists. The best artists we knew were the highest known artists were Jack Kirby.
We knew Jack Kirby. And that was a game changer both from a personal standpoint and from what Pacific Comics ended up being, because there was no one till to this day, and there will never be anyone as close to Jack Kirby. He created the world of comics. He is the best person ever.
And Jack was producing comics for Marvel and DC along the way, and was not getting the respect that he was due on any level. Ownership, royalties, artwork back, copies of his comics.
He had left the publishing business to work for Hanna-Barbera and a few other animation studios out of just sheer frustration. He had fought for years, and they didn't understand how important creators were. And we as young wannabe publishers, we wanted to figure out how to create comic books that were pretty cool, and all we thought was creators were the most important people. We didn't realize publishers only thought they were important. We just came out and said, gee, we need creators, therefore they're really important people. We better figure out how to treat them with a lot of respect, but otherwise they're not going to work for us.
And along the way, we had been sending Jack Kirby comics that he had drawn or written.
For Marvel and DC.
Because they never sent him samples of his work.
They didn't send creators copies of their published work. They barely sent back the artwork, let alone the printed book. So we were sending them, every month Jack would publish, he'd get his 4 or 5 books a month, or his machine was incredible, and we just send them copies.
As a courtesy, didn't ever expect anything back.
And we had met Jack a number of times both at conventions. Steve and I were part of Comic-Con early on, not the first year, but the second year, for the big convention. And we'd been to Jack's house a couple of times early on, and so we'd become not close personal friends, but friends. We were the kids that Jack kind of admired. And so we were trying to figure out how to do this. And we were sending them copies, and they gave us an in.
So we thought, well, we'll contact Jack. There's no shot, but maybe he can give us a clue. So we sent him a...
He's a very professional, courteous guy that would listen to anybody, and whether you were 2 years old or 100 years old, everyone was with respect. There was no looking down or, I'm the king of comics. It was like, hey, Bill. I wasn't a little kid. It was, hey, Bill, day one. And he remembered your name. My first trip to Kirby's house was in 71 or 72 with Barry Alfonso and a bunch of the other Comic-Con kids. And I remember Roz greeted us at the front door, and she was very concerned we were hungry from the long drive in San Diego. So we lived in Thousand Oaks. And she drove out to McDonald's and got 125 hamburgers to feed the kids, because she was afraid we'd be hungry. And we sat around his pool, watching Jack regale us with drawings and talking about what's then, we're like, eyes are like saucers, just absorbing this, Michelangelo.
So we get on the IBM Select typewriter with ball.
We had a ball typewriter then. We had a regular typewriter before.
And then type them out a letter. I'm sure there was plenty of typos in it. I'm sure there was.
One pretty.
We're now in our 20s, or I was in 20s.
Right.
Still very young.
I'm working on it.
And we both have other jobs besides the comic stores. We're both working other jobs to feed cash flow and all of that. We just work.
How many stores did you have at that time? I only knew of 2.
We ended up with four stores at one time. We had Pacific Beach, Claremont, Oceanside, California, the military base, which is a funny story, and then San Diego State.
Yeah.
And our Oceanside store, ironically, there was the big military base, the Marine base, and then there was a convenience store. There was a Pacific Comics store, which was a very large store, and then it's called a House of Ill Repute.
Oh.
Right? And payday, of course, in the Marines is every 2 weeks. So it depends which way the Marines were walking, do we have good week or not? because if they somehow got lost and went to the other side of the street first and came back from our direction, they'd be about $34 cheaper than they had on the first direction. So we knew if we had a good day or not, we were better than the ladies working that day. If we had a bad day, ladies were working really hard. And we couldn't figure out how to figure out they were better than we were. Because a lot of guys by themselves, comics are ladies. I don't know. It's a tough pull.
Is that the order that you opened the stores that you just quoted?
What's that?
The order of opening?
There's Pacific Beach, Claremont, Oceanside, and San Diego State.
San Diego State.
San Diego State, Oceanside.
I don't know if you guys know this, but you opening the comic book stores in San Diego had a very peculiar effect. I had a store in El Centro.
Right.
I carried comics. I could not get comics. because you guys were buying all of it.
Well, San Diego Periodicals was literally from San Diego up to Orange County and all the way to Arizona. That was their zone.
So
So we
I
sucked
started
with everything.
I started driving to Yuma to buy comics for my store,
Sorry about
which
that.
got the Arizona magazine distributor interested in distributing to El Centro, which
Right.
caused a war between the two distributors. And since they were owned by both of them were owned by these guys in Chicago, it ended up being a nationwide war between distributors.
Well,
Phoenix, Kansas City, Chicago, LA,
On that topic, just to backtrack for a second.
and you guys caused it.
Well, there was disruption amongst the force, but the force hadn't started yet. Because back in those days, when we had the mailer comics and we had the retail stores and we were buying direct from the distributors and from the publishers, that local San Diego distributor, San Diego Periodical distributors, was not a happy camper. He's the godfather wannabes. And so they decided to make sure we understood they were not happy. So I was going to University High School up on the hill over here, and my brother gave me his car, first year Honda car, two-cylinder motorcycle engine turned on that side. They had to make car engines back then. And so I drive to school every day, and then the car was so short, only 8.5 feet long, front bumper to bumper. You could park it sideways in the parking spot and it'll still fit. But yeah, when you go to school, and it was all fiber, there's no metal in the car, it's all fiberglass. So you park your car normal parking way in a high school lot. And I would come out, after they were warning us, I would come out from my car and my car would be turned sideways with all 4 tires slit for like 2 weeks all. I was buying 4 tires a day. I'm like, it's getting very expensive just to drive your car to high school. Because they clearly didn't want us to buy around them. They were making no margin, and they were sending us a message saying, knock it off, come back to us. You can handle this the right way, we can handle it our way. And they were not very subtle. Not in my states anyway.
It's just learning curve.
They were tough critters.
Huge learning curve.
So anyway, Jack Kirby.
But back to Jack Kirby. So we
Good
sent him the letter.
Thank you.
And Jack calls us out of the blue,
Pretty fast.
very fast. And he had been working on some comic book concepts, and especially a new thing called graphic novels. And he had one called Captain Victory he was working on, and would we consider publishing that?
He was actually asking us if we would like to work with him. We were like, duh, this is Jack Kirby. And he's like, well, would you be willing to work with me? I'm Jack Kirby. We're like, yes. It was pretty cool.
Very nice. It turned out Jack got into business at a very young age, so he actually could understand what we were going through. He had a lot of similar things when he got into business. So yes, Jack, let's go. So
He says, like, well, what kind of contract do you have? We go, we'll get you one. Well, what's a contract? We didn't understand his rights, permissions, and what we did understand earlier on, though, is that we knew that he left comics because Marvel and DC were treating him very poorly. There was no creator rights. There was no artwork being returned. So in our mind, remember, the creators were the most important aspect. Without content, everything else is irrelevant. So we said, well, Jack, you own everything. We're going to be custodian of your work. You're going to house your work at our offices, but you own your artwork. You own your rights. We'll just represent you until you tell us not to anymore. We're just temporary custodians. It's your business. And so he's like, that's what I've been wanting to do for 40 years. Thank you. And he was quick to sign. And having your first book coming out from Jack Kirby is a game changer in every aspect. Now, the other thing he did is he had to figure out how to make the other distributors, our competitors, want to buy comics from us, a new startup. New comics back then were 50 cents each, cover price. And we're like, well, that's just too cheap. We thought there was more. We're going to bring these superstars to life, back from the dead, so to speak. So we priced those at $1, twice Marvel and DC. And we knew as a distributor that we're buying it 60% off, 50 cents. So we were paying Marvel 20 cents a comic book. And we're like, well, why would they want to buy an unknown company's books, these other distributors? We better give them an incentive to do so. We're pricing them $1 and give distributors 70% off. So we'd be able to charge them 30 cents each, so 10 cents more, but 50 cents more profit. So it's a game changer from the distributor angle, and all we said was, fine, 70% off, the only deal is you have to buy 10,000 for every issue. It was a leap of faith. And the 9 distributors all bought 10,000 copies. Unknown, from a company they never heard before, except we're a distributor, competitive distributor on the West Coast. They had no idea who we were. We never really commingled in circles.
They didn't realize our age or anything else, they just.
Our typo list went out because there's a citation copy with typos in it. Like, Captain Brick number 1, they're like, what's the deal? 70 off. You get payment terms, which you couldn't get from RMDC back then, you had to prepay. And twice the price. So you're really making double your money on a wholesaler to try something new. And they're, clearly by the orders, they were pretty excited. And we ended up printing